All right, welcome. My name's Adam. This is the Dealan-de podcast. I'm here with Rachel Jordana, and we are just going to have a little conversation about some stuff. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course.
I want to jump right in with. So I've done a few podcasts so far, and a lot of people have come on, have talked about ecstatic dance, have talked about different modalities, but there's always a hint about five rhythms. There's always
Mhm.
back to the legacy of Gabriel Roth and the five rhythms is felt on by so many dancers in so many places, and you're sort of the first five rhythms teacher that I've had on here, and I just wanted to kind of jump in with you of what is the five rhythms and what it's done for you, and kind of just go into that.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing that's probably really important to share is that ecstatic dance comes from five rhythms. So basically, Gabrielle Roth developed the five rhythms at Esalen. There was a point in time where she was injured, and she was previously a professional dancer. And she was dancing around the fire one night after being injured, and all sad that she couldn't dance professionally. And then she realized that actually, as long as she lets go of any technique and just lets her body move however it wants to, she can just dance into ecstasy and trance. So there was that part. And then also during childbirth, she had this experience when she was birthing her son, Jonathan. She had this experience that energy moves in waves. So, if you look at actually a lot of energy in the universe, it's true. There's a lot of waves. There's that action potential, and there's the waves of the ocean. And, there's just these cycles of life. So she named them, and she named them flowing, staccato, chaos, lyrical, and stillness. We'll get into that in a moment. But basically, she had classes that she was teaching people the energy of flowing and the philosophy behind it, the energy of staccato, and so on. And then she would have something called a Sweat Your Prayers, which was where we'd go and practice. So we would learn the five rhythms, and then in a Sweat Your Prayers, there'd be no instruction, and it would just be an opportunity to dance the wave with the intention of deeper embodiment, exploring this philosophy. So Sweat Your Prayers became very popular. People would go to sweats, and they would dance, barefoot, no talking, no drugs, on Sunday morning, like no one's watching, get into states of trance and ecstasy. But to become a five rhythms teacher was very hard and long. It took me more work to become a five rhythms teacher than it did to get my PhD. So, it was inaccessible. There weren't a lot of people who were able to offer this. So this guy, Max Fathom, asked one of my teachers, Claire, or at the time her name was Lori Smullen, to teach him how to make a wave. And so she did. I'm sure he could have learned on his own, but she sat him down, she taught him, and then he took the wave to Kalani and started ecstatic dance. So ecstatic dance deeply comes from the five rhythms. It is a practice that was 100% born out of it. And then now, of course, it's evolved. It's got a mind of its own. So five rhythms is a very intentional, dedicated spiritual practice that is really about containment, containment and wildness, but a shared intention, the dissolution of the ego. It's a deep spiritual shamanic practice, whereas ecstatic dance is not that. It can be that for certain people. Different people make up what's true for them, but there's no clear shared intention around spirituality and depth. There's just more a clear intention to come together and dance in a sober way and have an experience. And then the other, I think, important piece of information is that the five rhythms really accentuates the full range of human emotion. So ecstatic dance doesn't, the name is like, let's have fun, let's be in ecstasy. Five rhythms is really, in it, she really talks a lot. Gabrielle really talks a lot about sadness, anger, jealousy, rage, stuckness, numbness. There's a space to dance all of that intentionally and move through it. So that's also one of the ways that it differs from ecstatic dance.
Okay. And then you talked about the five rhythms and so she developed a wave based off the five rhythms, basically. Is that?
Sure, it's a little effusive. You kind of have to experience it to understand, but I'll just tell you what they are. There's flowing, which is the feminine energy and it's fluid movements. And there's staccato, which is the masculine energy, and it's very clear movements, you know, that the beat will come in at that point and people will be doing things that shake their hips a little. And chaos is the blending of the masculine and the feminine, and it gets really frenetic and the music gets really loud and people kind of shake it out, like, you know how if animals experience trauma, they'll like shake it off. It's so they shaking off your nervous system, letting go of your head. So you can usually tell there's a five rhythms dancer because their heads bopping all over the place. So there's chaos, which is also about letting it go. And then after chaos comes lyrical, which is a more fluid, floating, happy, light, levity state. And then there's stillness, which is it's kind of like moving in molasses and honey. It's the energy of rest, calm, integration, but it's not in the movement. You're not still, you know, you're moving slowly and prayerfully, kind of like Qigong or Tai Chi. And then you go back to flowing. You do it again, wave after wave after wave.
And so what was your journey into this? What brought you to it, and how did you get started?
Well, I was in my PhD program for psychology and I was having a hard time for various reasons. I was having a hard time in my body, just feeling uncomfortable and overweight. And I was also struggling mentally, just studying all about the problems of the world and listening to people and really, really rough stories all day. I felt like this absorbent sponge and I was kind of losing hope. You know, I was just in a bad place. I was at a yoga class, and after the yoga class, someone was like, hey, there's this thing called Sweat Your Prayers. You should come. And because I was right there, I just kind of walked into the room. And it was amazing. It was like the second I walked in the room and started dancing, it was as though there was this great remembering that I was born to dance and that I had lost my passion in life because I'd lost my essence. And part of that was through this intuitive movement. And yeah, I just kind of got hooked. I started going all the time. I went and studied with Gabrielle. I flew to the East Coast and went and studied with Gabrielle a week later. And announced to her that I was planning to become a teacher. And she's like, oh, honey, it's a long path. I know. Thanks for telling me. And I looked at her and I was like, you don't know me.
So what was the deviation between just being, you know, like static, just dancing, and then to the depth of the practice that Gabrielle offered that you started investing in?
I was straight up uncomfortable dancing, like going to a club and like dancing and like talking to people and getting drunk or even being sober and trying to like have a conversation. And but yeah, I was just super uncomfortable. I mean, I didn't do it. There was something about the Sweat Your Prayers where it was a clear intention. I walked in and there was a field of permission. It was clear that it was an opportunity for expressive emotion and for my dance, not to socialize and dance with people and have fun together. Although that's an option, that's not the one and only intention. It was like the difference between it being my dance for me and my process versus me being out dancing in a social situation where part of my job is to be socially pleasing.
I do find when I noticed for myself too, when I first gotten to dance, or when I noticed anybody that would, first thing I hear is it's very internal, like they come for themselves, you know, that it's not like a social gathering. You're investing in yourself.
For some people, I mean,
Yeah.
it depends what dance you're talking about. And also, it's not that that is the only way, it's that there's the full range available. So if you do want to come and be social, that is also available. Or if you want to come and commune with nature or God or the whole group or, you know, your left knee, it's all available. But the difference is that you get to make up the script You know, when you're at a club or you're out dancing at a party, there's kind of a certain set of expectations, like rolling around on the floor and drooling and crying. People would think you're a crazy person. But if you do that in a sweat your prayers, you know, it's pretty par for the course.
You wrote me kind of your story a bit, and you're saying like that it transformed your life. Someone who maybe who's not done this, how would how would someone say, well, how does dance transform your life? How does that transform your life? You're just dancing, or you're just going to dance. How would that have an effect to really change one's life, and why would I want that, or what's engaging and interesting about that?
Right. So as I mentioned, this particular process took me longer than getting my PhD in clinical psychology. So my experience is that a very good dance or a very good workshop is equivalent to years of therapy. The way we can understand that scientifically is that if you're stuck in a movement pattern, or a thinking pattern, you've got these neurons, these neural networks that are doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're stuck in a pattern. And through movement, or through some specific intentional change, you have the opportunity to recreate neural networks. So, an example would be if you always walk a certain way and then someone kind of taps you and rearranges your entire body structure. Well, it's possible that going from this being the way that you operate in the world, someone taps your back and shows you that your posture has been off. And then all of a sudden you start looking up with your shoulders back. There's also, it changes how you view the world and your experience of life. But additionally, there's something called facial feedback, which is the way that you carry yourself, or any way that you act with your body goes straight to your brain and it impacts your well-being. So there's a capacity to kind of rearrange the entire way you think by rearranging your posture and your movements. There's a direct connection between the body and the mind. Also, exercise is good for your mental health. But also a huge piece is that there's a lot of witnessing, mirroring, reflection, and unconditional love that happens in these 5 rhythms containers. It's part of the practice. And those are actually basic tenets of the psychological practice. So there's a lot of actually kind of unspoken psychological interventions that are happening, and they're hitting us on a cellular level and on an unconscious level in a dance practice. And because we're kind of in these open spaces and kind of vulnerable, it sinks in a little bit deeper than it can in talk therapy. I mean, in talk therapy, sometimes something hits you and it is huge. I'm a big advocate of talk therapy, but movement's a separate and also very important piece of the healing puzzle. And I actually developed something else called creative dance psychology to integrate the two, and was teaching it in, psychological based universities, and getting research done to basically prove that we need to incorporate movement into the larger psych curriculum. It's inadequate to teach a PhD in psychology and not have a movement class.
And then what I imagine too, like, if you're doing ecstatic dance, you can get not stuck, but you can stay within a comfortable movement pattern. But what I'm hearing, in the 5 rhythms is like, well, you're invited to go to these different movements, from flow to staccato. Is that, which might?
I mean, look, you can stay stuck in ecstatic dance, and you can stay stuck in 5 rhythms, and you can be catalytic in ecstatic dance and in 5 rhythms. The difference is that in a 5 rhythms class, there's specific and intentional guidance where someone gives you a direction, and should you follow it, it's got the capacity to change. If someone offers a piece of wisdom that gets you moving in a new direction, that allows your body and your mind to discover pieces of healing that had previously been stuck. That can happen in an ecstatic dance. It's just not, it's not through someone else's worded guidance. And, maybe it's easier to stay stuck in a pattern there, I would say, because there's not someone like trying to niggle you.
Kind of guiding you to new pathways, like you're saying, the mind-body connection.
Well, in a 5 rhythms class, and even a sweat, even when there's no language, the space holder. I mean, ecstatic dance DJs are musicians who like to play music. They're not trained in space holding. They're not noticing. They might be able to say, okay, the room's not feeling it, and then play another song that gets a bigger impact. And they definitely have the ability to create a soundscape that is pleasing to the ear and gets us moving. But conscious dance facilitators are trained to be noticing the emotional territory of the space and to be holding it specifically and intentionally. And I believe that that intention matters.
And then so the Five Rhythms, Gabrielle she passed away. What was it, several years ago, or what?
In 2012, yeah.
Oh, so it's been a while.
Mhm.
And then since then, how has things evolved, or how has it sort of left to your own, or are you still connected to the school? Is it a school? Like,
Well, it's a school that doesn't have any particular center because Gabrielle was wacky like that. You'd have to fly all over the world to study with her. But so basically what happened is she left the Five Rhythms to her son, Jonathan, who's now teaching it. There was a bunch of other very brilliant teachers who didn't feel that aligned with Jonathan's methods of teaching and holding the curriculum. After Gabrielle died, they were close confidants of Gabrielle's, and they really worked well with her, but they didn't work as well. I don't know. They didn't feel that they were being given the, I don't know exactly how to say it. It didn't work for them to work with Jonathan. And so they started their own practice and called Open Floor, which they're now training people all over the world. And it's another curriculum that is more based in emotionality. I can't speak a ton to it because I don't know it. I'm not as familiar with it, but from what I understand, Gabrielle's Five Rhythms is really a shamanic practice, and Open Floor has a lot of roots in intentional psychology. And then other people also branched out from the Five Rhythms practice. So Gabrielle had a very tight leash on the Five Rhythms. You know, you could only teach it and you could only use the names if you're a Five Rhythms teacher, and to become a Five Rhythms teacher is very hard. And, you know, basically all of these Five Rhythms teachers were like, this isn't accessible. I want dance to be available for everyone. And they took off on their own. They had developed followings under the Five Rhythms, and then they took off on their own and they started new wonderful things. There's also the 360 Emergence, which is Kate, Shayla, and Amber Ryan, and I study with them a lot also.
Can you speak to you mentioned the shamanic element to it? What can you speak to that a bit?
I mean, going to a Five Rhythms class is kind of similar to going to an ayahuasca ceremony. I mean, you just come out in touch with spirit and getting messages and transport. I mean, that's available. That's not true for everyone, but it's a very powerful catalytic experience to dance through these waves.
And you're saying, where are you at now with it? Because you've been at it for a while now, and you said in the beginning it was a struggle. What was the transformation that happened from then to now, or where is it? I mean, a little bit of your story around that, I guess.
Oh, I would say there's two important pieces. The biggest one was that I made peace with my body. So I was really uncomfortable with my size, and I was having some thyroid issues that were undiagnosed, and I just felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable moving, and I felt uncomfortable with how I looked. And when I started dancing, I started really loving my body and loving how it felt and loving how it moved. And I also had the opportunity to listen deeply to what I was needing and to get some treatment. So then emotionally, it ended up creating a lot of change because it created a big community of like-minded people that I really enjoyed, and also gave me another goal, another passion in life that I appreciated. And then there's also really deep work that happens in the practice. There's, you know, different workshops have different intentions, but there's just ones on how to navigate chaos, or how to find more clarity in your life, or how to find more flow. You know, each rhythm has a teaching, and those teachings have really impacted my thought.
And then where do you, what's the avenue that you are working on in it? Is there an area that is enticing you and you're passionate about?
Yeah, well, I'm a psychologist, so my classes very intentionally evoke emotion, allow for opportunities for deep psychological process, catalyze transformation and healing. There's opportunities to talk with each other afterwards. I very intentionally include psychological interventions in my classes. Yeah, I mean, for sure, I have a unique style that I bring.
Well, and it seems like a big subject that's emerging in kind of the larger society is around trauma and trauma work, and they're like the body that keeps score, or James Gordon's The Transformation. They all kind of touch on, oh, dance is a potential way to heal this too, but they don't really go that far into that. But it's Gabby Ross kind of five rhythm, and what you're saying, it's really in depth in that.
I mean, Gabrielle Roth was certainly not trauma informed. No. The practice is currently adapting and re-engaging based on the newer research and the newer ideas around how to heal trauma. Certainly my classes offer that. And Lucia Horan is a pretty popular teacher, and she has most certainly incorporated Peter Levine's work and a lot of trauma-informed care. But yes, dance has the capacity to heal trauma. It also has the capacity to re-traumatize if not done properly. And so it's really important that you work with someone who knows what they're doing, and also that you trust yourself, because ultimately, if you're really traumatized and you're coming to a dance floor and the dance floor is evoking you, ultimately no one can do your deep breathing for you. So although we can have really trauma-informed teachers and we can have a class, you can go through a big process. If you start spinning out when there's one teacher and 45 students, you have to be prepared to calm yourself down a little bit. So, and in workshops, generally there's, other people to help. So I'm not saying don't go if you're traumatized. I'm just saying to temper yourself, that going to a 2-hour class with a teacher is not the time for you to dive deep into your trauma and get to places where you need help to come out, because there's, it's not that container.
Yeah. You're saying if it's not a container that's held, and you really start spinning out, you're saying like that could really deepen your trauma, or not not really hold it well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be prepared to hold your own. There's going to be people who can help you, of course, but if you're spinning out, it's also, ultimately on you to regulate. We can have people to co-regulate, but the trauma informed way is that sometimes we'll activate and then calm people down, and then activate them and then calm them down, and then activate them. So you learn in your nervous system that you actually can calm down when you're activated. So if you're in an intentionally trauma-informed space, there is the capacity for a lot of healing. You just have to be intentional about it. And sometimes trauma comes up that's unexpected, and you just, hold it and then process it later. You just feel, oh, there's this thing in my body I didn't realize was there. And then you keep dancing. And this is part of lyrical, right? Trauma often comes up in chaos. And then we get to lyrical and it's soothing. And then we're in stillness and it's calming. And so there's this kind of way that the dance activates you and then settles you. And those are open floor words, actually, to activate and settle. It's one of the open floor principles. Yeah, but I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't say go to a 5 rhythms class to heal your trauma. That would be an inadequate way to heal your trauma. I would say that it would be a good, that there's the possibility your trauma can get healed there in conjunction with therapy and some intentional other processing.
And you said you created your own from it. Can you explain that, or go a little bit into that, of what you had evolved your practice into?
I developed a practice called creative dance psychology, which very specifically examines multiple levels and layers of depth psychology from Carl Jung, and takes those layers and puts them into embodied interventions. So there's the layer of the self and of the relationship and of the group, the community, and the layer of the family. And then there's ancestors and the collective conscious and the collective unconscious. And we have different classes or different workshops that examine different things. So, I mean, it's really fun, actually. There's like a whole workshop on ancestral healing and a whole workshop on, what it is to be in community and the family layer. Sometimes I'll do like psychodrama. You put everyone in different constellations of their family, and we create a score, and then we'll play music, and we'll have kind of like they'll act out an experience that was painful, and then there will be a resolution in the end. And it basically creates, it's called a corrective emotional experience, but it creates something really special. And yeah, there's some deep healing that happens in those classes too, but that's not five rhythms.
Mhm. What's sort of your biggest challenge as a teacher? Or what's your biggest, as continuing the practice and offering the practice, what do you find is challenging in today's environment?
Well, I would say that maybe 70% of my mental effort goes towards teaching, and it's maybe 1% of my income. So, it's definitely not a path at the moment for me that is, a career in finances. But I know that that's, that could change if I decide to teach larger workshops. And then also, I would say people's projections is pretty significant. If someone does come to a 2-hour dance class saying this, I heard this is how I'd heal my trauma, and now I'm more upset than I ever was, and it's your fault and you need to fix it. Or the opposite, which is, oh my God, I just found God on the dance floor, and it's because you are so amazing and I want to be your best friend, and can we go for tea now? All of that is difficult to manage, because it's this is a practice where people need to take care of their own sovereignty. And that is, at least on my dance floor, I expect people to acknowledge that it's them who's having a process, it's them who's having a healing, it's them who's traumatized, and that I can facilitate it and I can help calm them down. Co-regulation is a real thing, but it's really important that people acknowledge their own sovereignty and who they are. And I don't have the opportunity to explain that sometimes in a 2-hour class.
Yeah, and I can imagine that can bring up stuff for you to be, put you up and then also tear you down, and that's
well, either one. Yeah, I mean, I have pretty good boundaries around it, but it's definitely a thing that happens.
Is there anything else you'd love to share or discuss?
No, that's all.
Yeah. And then I also saw that you had relationship anarchy was something that I've heard a bit about that. What can you just briefly share a little bit about what relationship anarchy is? Or if that's something that's not really your area.
Well, it's funny. I've had a few people ask me. Someone else recently asked me to be on a TV show around it, and I'm not sure that that's something that I'm quite wanting to incorporate deeply into my professional world. And
Sure.
I would actually appreciate it if you asked me beforehand if we were going to talk.
Oh, yeah, no problem. No problem.
But what I will say is that it's the notion that we get to write our own scripts in life, and that you don't just have a relationship because that is your relationship. So for example, my relationship with a step parent could look like anything, and it's based on the relationship. It's based on that person. It's not based on because they have the title step parent. So every relationship has the capacity for a lot of love and a lot of triggers, really. And it's relational anarchy talks about not ranking relationships and not living with entitlement. So, and making up your own script. So for example, I'm really close friends with my ex-husband, and we go on family trips together, and we have a great family, honestly, but we're not together anymore. And my current partner will join us, and my partner and I are in our dynamic, but we're still, we wrote a new script. We decided, okay, well, I didn't like being married to this guy. He didn't like being married to me, but we can still be really good friends, and we can still be a family, and we're bringing in our other partners. So anyways, it's just more the notion that you create what you want. You don't have to live with someone just because you're dating them. You don't have to share finances. You don't have to have children. Or you could live with someone and not date them, or you could share finances with someone and not be in a relationship with them. Like, you get to, being in a couple or being friends or being family doesn't, mean that you have to do a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm. And that relating back to dance it sort of sounds like it's like finding an authentic relationship that works for you and works in relationship, which often seems to come out on the dance floor, is like, how do I have a authentic relationship with another dancer, with myself? Is that accurate or relatable?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you get to make up the rules. I mean, again, on the dance floor and off the dance floor, consent is always extremely important. So in relational anarchy, there's also this experience of, like, sneak in a style of relationship without asking someone. So for example, you get to agree with someone. Is this a relationship where there's physical contact, or is this a relationship where there's emotional intimacy? And maybe I think that we're supposed to be emotionally intimate, but the other person thinks that we're not. And then I feel betrayed because they don't want to process with me all night. And they thought, well, hey, I thought all we were doing was, like, snuggling at that dance. So the idea is that you actually have to communicate and have consent around what it is you're expecting from someone and what you might want from them after an experience. So yeah, I mean, definitely on the dance floor, you could have these sweet, beautiful dances with someone and then be disappointed if they don't talk to you the next day. So communication is really important.
Yeah, we have so many kind of unspoken perceptions of what relationship is, or who we are. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you coming on, and definitely it's great to hear about the 5 rhythms and from a teacher that teaches it, and what that's about. It's definitely, she left a legacy, and it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'd love for anyone who's listening who's interested to come and check my work out. I have you can find me at 5rhythmswithrachelJordana.com. I live in Santa Cruz, and I have classes here often, and I actually have a residential workshop coming up May 12th to 14th in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's only $345. It's called Sanctuary, and it's about finding safety in your body. So it is one of the intentional deep practices that is trauma informed. And I really welcome anyone who feels their interest piques to come and work with me, because this is my passion in the world, and I do it because I really believe in it. Obviously not because it makes me very much money. So yeah, if you think that this could be for you and you sound interested in what I have to offer, I would really encourage you to reach out.
Excellent. And then I can put some links into that underneath this.
Great. Awesome.
And then trying to think if there's any last questions I had while I have you here. I guess any last thoughts about the 5 rhythms and Gabor Roth's practice that you'd love to share, or that probably we've kind of handled it?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say go try it out. Like, if you're into ecstatic dance and you're an ecstatic dancer, go check out the 5 rhythms. That it really has the opportunity to deepen your dance and to change things for you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Rachel, for your time.
Great.
And I'll take care.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.